The aurora was never meant to be beautiful, but in the silence of deep space, with its segmented hull catching the light of a distant star, it looked almost graceful. Like a spindle wrapped in silver thread, it drifted forward on the invisible push of its Alcubierre drive, cutting across the vacuum with a bubble of bent spacetime. To Earth, the ship was humanity's boldest hope, a vessel designed to leap further than probes and satellites ever could. To its crew, it was a home, and perhaps a coffin. Captain Elena Markov stood at the observation deck, arms folded, eyes fixed on the distant pinprick of Sol. At this distance, their star looked like any other, its warmth a faint memory. She breathed in slowly, listening to the faint hum of circulation pumps. The air always smelled the same in Aurora, a sterile mix of recycled oxygen and the faint tang of machine oil. It wasn't Earth, but it was theirs. Navigation reports stable field integrity, came a voice behind her. Dr. Yara Chen, astrophysicist and mission specialist, moved like she belonged here, quick and certain. She brushed a lock of black hair from her face and offered the captain a tired smile. "We are still on course. Estimated arrival at System 92 Gamma in 6 hours. Elena nodded. 6 hours. After nearly 3 years of preparation and 9 months in transit, their real mission was about to begin. Kepler 92d, catalogued, charted, scanned from afar, but never touched. Probes had failed to survive the descent, their transmissions garbled, but what they had sent, that had been enough to stir imaginations on Earth. A signal, repeating, structured, too regular to be natural, too strange to decode. And so the Aurora had been sent. Behind Yara, Lieutenant Omar Reyes floated into view, mag boots clanking as he tethered himself by the viewport. His dark eyes flicked toward the shrinking speck of Sol. "Never gets old, does it?" he said softly. "Looking back, I keep expecting to see it bigger." "You'll have your chance to see something bigger soon enough," Yara said. Omar chuckled, "provided it doesn't eat us." Elena turned from the viewport, letting them chatter. She trusted them. Every one of the 12 crew had been selected for skill, temperament, and resilience. Still, she carried the weight of their survival. One miscalculation, one overlooked detail, and their expedition would become a footnote in Earth's endless archives of lost missions. The hum of the ship deepened, a vibration that resonated through the deck plates. "Doctor." Raj Patel's voice crackled over comms. "Captain, drive bubbles holding steady. Readings are green across engineering." "Thank you, Raj," Elena replied. Her voice was calm, but her chest tightened. This was no longer just about holding steady. This was the edge of human space, the frontier where imagination bled into danger. She gathered the crew an hour later in the central hub. They floated in a loose circle, held by magnetic boots, faces lit by the soft blue glow of the holomap. A three-dimensional rendering of Kepler 92d shimmered between them, a blue and white sphere streaked with strange crystal-like formations at its equator. "This," Elena began, "is why we're here. Kepler 92d. Oceans covering 80% of the surface, crystalline structures on the landmasses, atmosphere close enough to Earth's to make the scientists back home jealous. And then, of course, the signal. The holomap shifted, displaying a jagged waveform. The sound filled the hub, rising, falling, pulsing in a pattern that was alien, yet deliberate. A haunting resonance, like glass struck underwater. "It repeats every 14 hours, Yara said, stepping forward. "Non-random, non-geological, we've ruled out atmospheric interference. If this isn't communication, then it's the closest mimicry we've ever recorded." Dr. Layla Okafor, biologist, leaned forward, eyes wide. "Do we know if it's coming from the surface?" Yara hesitated. "Not exactly. Source is diffuse. Sometimes it triangulates to the ocean. Sometimes to the crystalline landforms. Whatever's broadcasting isn't following rules we understand. Like nothing else we've seen," Omar muttered. "Exactly," Elena said. "And that's why we're here. Tomorrow we'll enter orbit. The first landing will follow once we've mapped atmospheric stability. Our mission is simple in words, but not in execution. Explore, record, survive. We don't know what we'll find. We may not understand it, but humanity sent us to learn. A silence fell over the hub. They all felt it, the enormity of the moment pressing down like gravity. Finally, Raj's voice broke the stillness over comms. With respect, Captain, exploration is never simple, but if there's something alive out there, maybe it's been waiting for us. The thought lingered, waiting. The 6 hours stretched like a taut wire. Crew members busied themselves with final checks, recording messages to Earth, adjusting systems that had already been adjusted a dozen times. Elena sat in her quarters, a narrow room with a fold-out bunk and a single photo pinned to the wall. Her brother, Daniel, smiling awkwardly on a beach back home. She hadn't told him the truth, the dangers, the risks. She hadn't told anyone on Earth about the dreams. For weeks, she had been dreaming of glass shores, beaches glittering with crystalline sand, waves that sang when they broke. Sometimes she heard voices carried on the wind, too distant to understand. She told no one. Dreams in deep space were common. Psychologists had warned them of that. But these dreams felt different. She shook the thought away when the ship's AI chimed. "Captain, we are approaching System 92 Gamma, transitioning out of warp bubble in T-minus 60 seconds. She strapped in at the command chair as the ship shuddered. Lights flickered, space warped, and then reality snapped back. Before them hung a star, white gold and burning. Around it circled 4 planets, one of them a jewel of blue, Kepler 92d. Gasps echoed through the command deck. Even through reinforced windows, the world was breathtaking. Swirls of storm bands twisted over endless oceans, broken by archipelagos of glittering white. Where continents should have been green or brown, they shimmered like fractured prisms. "My God," whispered Layla, "it's alive." The signal rose again, picked up instantly by the ship's sensors. Stronger now, louder, as though the planet itself had noticed them. "Captain," Yara said, her voice tight, "the signal, it's synchronizing with our systems, it's adapting." Omar muttered a curse in Spanish. "Adapting to us? What does that even mean?" Elena's hands tightened on the armrests. She stared at the shining world ahead. For the first time in months, she felt something colder than awe. The planet was waiting. The Aurora slid into orbit like a needle threading silk, its engines firing brief bursts to stabilize the trajectory. Below stretched Kepler 92d, filling the viewport with endless blue and crystalline white. From orbit, the landmasses resembled shards of shattered glass pressed into the oceans, razor-edged continents that glittered as though dusted with diamonds. The crew gathered again in the central hub, this time with eyes wide, speechless. The holomap rendered live scans in real time. Atmosphere rich with nitrogen and oxygen, trace amounts of argon, methane, and something else, unidentified particles pulsing in rhythmic concentrations. Stable pressure, breathable atmosphere, water composition 98% comparable to Earth, Yara read off the scrolling data. But those particles, her brow furrowed, they're structured, almost like they're organized, Layla finished, leaning close. She pointed at the waveforms. "Not random dispersion. Look, they spike in patterns, symmetrical." Omar whistled low. "So the air itself is alive?" "No," Yara said, though her voice lacked certainty. "Not alive, but it's behaving like a carrier, like the atmosphere's laced with a transmission medium." Captain Elena Markov folded her arms, like a planet-wide broadcast. The signal rose again, strong enough now to vibrate the deck plating. Everyone felt it, a resonance in the bones, as though the world below was plucking at their marrow. Raj's voice cut through from engineering. "Captain, whatever it is, our systems are picking it up across every channel. Communications, navigation, even life support monitors. It's bleeding into everything." "Can you block it?" Elena asked. "I can dampen it," Raj said. "But blocking, not unless we shut down half the ship." A murmur spread through the crew. The planet wasn't just calling, it was pressing against them, demanding to be heard. Elena raised a hand. "Then dampen it. We need clear systems when we descend." Hours passed in a frenzy of work. The Aurora released drones, their metallic bodies glinting as they skimmed the upper atmosphere. Data streamed back, dense cloud cover, frequent electrical storms, and most fascinatingly, vast crystalline formations rising hundreds of meters above the seas. Some resembled towers, others sprawling lattices like frozen lightning. Layla pressed her palms against the glass of the observation bay, watching footage as one drone skimmed the edge of a crystalline plateau. The structure refracted sunlight into rainbows that danced across the ocean below. "They look grown," she whispered. "Not carved, not eroded, grown." "Crystals can grow," Omar said. "Not like this," she replied, shaking her head. "Not in such deliberate geometry. Look at that symmetry. It's biological, or something we don't have a word for yet." Yara added quietly, "And the signal's strongest near those formations. It's like they're singing." Elena logged the findings, though are not formed in her chest. Structures that looked alive, broadcasting signals, dreams of glass shores that felt too much like prophecy. That evening, though evening was a construct on the ship's artificial day cycle, the crew assembled in the mess. Food pouches hissed open, filling the air with faint aromas of spiced lentils, pasta, dehydrated curry. Normally conversation would spill, laughter echoing in the confined space, but tonight the crew ate in silence, glancing at screens that continued to display the planet below. Finally, it was Raj who broke the quiet. "You all feel it, don't you? The pull." Omar snorted. "Pull? I feel like I'm sitting next to a giant speaker turned up too loud." Raj shook his head. "Not just the sound, the sense, like it's aware of us, like it knows we're here." Layla set down her fork. "I've been feeling that too. Since we dropped out of warp, I've had this itch, like I'm not supposed to be watching it, like it's watching me." "Dreams," Yara said suddenly. Her voice was soft, almost ashamed. "I've been dreaming of the shores, crystals stretching forever, waves that sing. I thought it was just stress, but..." She broke off when she saw Elena stiffen. Elena forced her face to remain neutral. If Yara was dreaming too, then it wasn't just her. The silence returned heavier now until Omar laughed sharply. "Dreams, pull, come on, it's just nerves. We've been in a box for 9 months. No surprise our brains are cooking up weird images. We're explorers, not prophets." But no one contradicted him. The next morning cycle, Elena called for a landing plan. The crew assembled at the mission table where the planet's rotating model spun. "Landing sites," she said, pointing to 3 marked zones. Zone A, equatorial lattice, large crystal formations. Zone B, mid-ocean archipelago, stable weather patterns. Zone C, southern plateau, minimal interference from the signal. Zone C, Omar said immediately, less risk. We can study without frying our instruments. Zone A, Layla countered almost at once. Her eyes gleamed with excitement. If those structures are alive, or at least partially biological, we need samples. Imagine the genetic data. Imagine what it could teach us. It could also kill us, Omar shot back. Zone B's a compromise, Yara offered. Archipelago gives us stable terrain but still close enough to signal spikes for study. Arguments flared, the room heating with tension. Elena let them clash, weighing each point, until finally she raised her hand. The voices fell silent. "We're not here to take the easy route," she said. "Earth sent us because probes failed. If we want answers, we can't sit in the shallows. We'll land in Zone A," Omar swore under his breath but didn't argue further. Elena leaned closer to the map. The crystalline formations glimmered like daggers jutting from the equator. Somewhere within them, the signal pulsed, steady and patient. "Prep the lander," she ordered. Later, as systems cycled down for sleep, Elena lingered again in her quarters. She hadn't told them everything. The dreams were changing, no longer just shores. Now she saw shapes moving within the crystal, shadows that bent light. They seemed to look back at her, though she couldn't see faces. Her comm terminal buzzed. Yara's voice whispered through. "Captain, you're dreaming too, aren't you?" Elena froze. "Yes." A pause, then Yara said, "They're not just dreams." The comm fell silent. Outside her window, Kepler 92d turned slowly, gleaming like a jewel. Waiting. The lander Solace detached from the aurora with a metallic shudder, thrusters flaring against the black. Captain Elena Markov sat strapped into the command seat, helmet clipped, but visor open. The cabin smelled of ozone and machine polish, every surface scrubbed clean in anticipation of contamination protocols. Around her, the away team settled in. Yara Chen hunched over her console, monitoring atmospheric data streaming in faster than her eyes could track. Layla Okafor adjusted her exosuit's bioscanners, fingers trembling with excitement. Omar Reyes checked and rechecked the lander's descent vectors, muttering under his breath in Spanish. The planet loomed large ahead, its surface filling the viewport. Clouds boiled in vast storms, white thunderheads flashing with silent lightning. Sunlight struck the crystalline landmasses, scattering into rainbows that rippled across the atmosphere. Systems green, Omar reported, voice taut. Lander integrity stable, entry in 3 minutes. Elena's hand closed around the armrest. Then let's make history. The descent began with fire. Plasma washed across the hull as Solace bit into atmosphere. The lander rattled, groaned, heat shields glowing orange. Through the viewport, the world blurred, a smear of light and fury. Velocity dropping, Omar said, knuckles white on the controls. Stabilizers holding. Atmosphere is denser than expected, Yara added, voice rising. Particles are interfering with readings. Pressure fluctuations compensating. The signal grew louder. It was no longer just sound in their instruments. It thrummed in their bones, a deep resonance that made teeth ache and eyes water. Layla pressed a hand to her visor as if it might dampen the vibration. Feels like flying through a cathedral bell, she muttered. Elena gritted her teeth. Focus, hold her steady. The storm broke suddenly, clouds parting to reveal a vast ocean glimmering below. Sunlight pierced through, scattering off crystalline formations that jutted from the sea like colossal spires. Some were smooth and translucent, others jagged, refracting light in fractured patterns. They stretched for kilometers, a labyrinth of glass mountains rising from the water. There, Yara pointed. Lattice formation ahead. Signal peak. That's our landing site. Omar swore but guided the lander toward the crystalline plateau. Thrusters fired, buffeting against shifting winds, until with a final jolt, Solace touched down. Magnetic clamps engaged with a hum. For a moment, no one moved. Only the sound of their breathing filled the cabin. We are down, Elena said softly. Mark it. Humanity's first landing on Kepler 92d. Suiting up took 15 minutes. Helmets sealed, visors polarized, bioscanners activated. The hiss of pressurization filled the cabin. External environment stable, Yara confirmed. Temperature 22 Celsius, oxygen at 20%, safe for limited exposure, but keep filters engaged until we've tested samples. Layla's eyes shone. It's like the planet wants us here. Omar shot her a glare. Planets don't want anything. Tell that to the signal, she replied. The ramp lowered with a hydraulic groan, spilling light into the cabin. Air swept inside, cool, faintly sweet, tinged with something metallic. The resonance grew louder, no longer filtered by hull plating. Elena stepped forward, boots clanking on the ramp. She paused at the threshold, staring out. The plateau stretched before them like a frozen sea, its surface composed of interlocking crystalline hexagons. They gleamed under the star's light, translucent yet pulsing faintly with inner radiance. Beyond, spires rose into the sky, their peaks piercing clouds, their edges refracting sunlight into cascades of color. The ocean lapped against the edges of the lattice below, each wave releasing a low, harmonic hum. Elena lifted her boot and placed it on alien ground. The surface vibrated beneath her, resonating in time with the signal. It felt less like stepping on stone and more like stepping on a vast instrument string. She exhaled. We are here. One by one, the others followed. Their visors reflected rainbow light as they spread out across the plateau. Layla crouched immediately, scanner humming as she scraped a crystalline shard into a containment capsule. Composition is silicon-based, but with trace elements I've never seen in this configuration. It's structured like DNA, crystalline DNA. That's not possible, Yara muttered. Tell that to the sample, Layla shot back, voice quivering with awe. Omar tested the ground with a seismic probe. The device vibrated, readings spiking. The whole plateau's hollow. We're standing on a shell. Elena's eyes narrowed. A shell of what? Before he could answer, the ground itself shifted. A low tremor rippled through the lattice, sending faint ripples of light racing across its surface. The crew froze, weapons unslung instinctively. Then the tremor subsided, leaving only the hum of the ocean. Seismic activity? Yara asked, voice tight. Maybe, Omar said, though his face betrayed doubt. Or maybe we just woke something up. Hours passed as they worked, each step documented, each sample carefully stored. Yet the more they studied, the stranger it became. The crystalline structures were not inert. They pulsed faintly when touched, like muscles responding to stimulus. Their internal lattices rearranged under scanning beams, as though aware of observation. Layla whispered into her recorder, "If this is a biosphere, it's unlike anything in Earth's taxonomy. Crystalline organic hybridization, possibly a planetary-scale organism." The wind shifted, carrying with it a sound like distant chimes. Elena lifted her head, heart pounding. It wasn't wind. It was voices, high, resonant, interwoven like a choir. Words she couldn't understand, yet the cadence was unmistakably language. "Captain," Yara breathed, visor fogging with her breath. "Do you hear that?" Elena swallowed. "Yes," the crystalline spires shimmered. Light rippled along their edges in rhythmic waves, synchronized with the choral resonance. For a moment, the world itself seemed alive, singing, speaking. Layla took an unsteady step forward, her hands trembling. "It's trying to communicate." Omar grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back. "Or it's warning us." The ground trembled again, harder this time. Cracks split across the lattice, glowing from within. The hum rose to a deafening pitch. "Back to the lander," Elena ordered. They scrambled, boots clattering across the vibrating surface. Behind them, the crystalline spires flared with blinding light, their song rising to a crescendo that felt like it would shatter their skulls. The ramp sealed behind them just as the plateau erupted. Shards of crystal burst upward like geysers, refracting light into searing beams that shot into the sky. The entire formation pulsed once, then fell silent. Breathless, sweating inside their suits, the crew collapsed into seats. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Elena whispered, "It knows we're here." Back aboard the Aurora, decontamination procedures dragged on for hours. Scanners probed every surface of their suits, every sample locked into quarantine. But even stripped of gear, the resonance lingered in their bones. In the mess, silence hung heavy again. The only sound was the faint, constant hum that seemed to follow them no matter where they went. "It wasn't random," Yara said finally. Her voice trembled. "The timing, the light, the sound, it was deliberate. Coordinated, that was communication." "Or a defense mechanism," Omar countered. Layla shook her head. "No, it was trying to speak. I could feel it." Elena stared down at her untouched tray. Her dreams would not leave her. Crystal shores, singing waves. And now voices. She rubbed her temple, but the resonance persisted, as though embedded in her very skull. "We'll analyze the data," she said at last. "We'll study the samples, but make no mistake, this isn't just geology. This world is alive, and it knows we've come." Outside the viewport, Kepler 92d turned silently, its crystalline spires glimmering like beacons, and somewhere deep within its oceans, the signal pulsed on, waiting. The Aurora's lab smelled faintly of ozone and disinfectant. Rows of sealed containment units lined the walls, each one holding a fragment of crystalline lattice retrieved from the plateau. The shards pulsed faintly under the lights, glowing as though alive. Layla Okafor leaned close to one, magnifier visor lowered, her voice low and reverent. "They're reacting," she whispered into her recorder, "not randomly. Look, when I move my hand, the internal lattice shifts. The crystals are aware of proximity." Beside her, Yara Chen frowned at the readouts. "That's not possible. Awareness requires energy, and these structures are stable. No metabolic output, no chemical reactions consistent with life." "Then explain this," Layla shot back. She placed her gloved finger against the glass of the containment unit. Instantly, the shard flared, refracting light into a rainbow pattern that danced across the lab walls. When she removed her hand, the glow faded. Yara hesitated. "It's resonant interaction, Pressure, temperature, maybe electromagnetic. Stop trying to fit it into Earth categories, Layla snapped. Her eyes were wide, almost feverish. This isn't mineral, it isn't biological, it's something new. Something that doesn't care about our definitions. The hum rose again, faint but undeniable, vibrating through the lab's deck plating. Both women fell silent. Captain Elena Markov observed from the lab's doorway, arms folded. She'd been making her rounds, checking on every section of the ship since the landing. Every crew member showed the same signs: fatigue, unease, dreams they wouldn't always admit to. She rubbed her temple, trying to ease the dull ache that had taken root since their descent. The resonance never left, it lingered in her skull like a second heartbeat. Elena, she turned. Omar Reyes stood in the corridor, jaw tight. You need to see this. They gathered in the observation deck. Raj Patel had already linked the feed to the main holoscreen. Outside the viewport, Kepler 92d glimmered, but the image magnified to focus on the crystalline plateau where they had landed. What am I looking at? Elena asked. Raj adjusted the playback. Drone footage. We left 3 atmospheric drones circling the site. Look. The video accelerated, time-lapsed. At first nothing. The plateau gleamed under the alien sun, ocean waves crashing against its edges. Then slowly the crystalline spires shifted. Not collapsed, not eroded, shifted. The formations moved like plants turning towards sunlight, reorienting themselves in precise synchronization. Spires bent, lattices rearranged, patterns realigned. And when the movement ended, the plateau had transformed. The lattice now resembled a spiral, perfect and deliberate, radiating outward from the exact spot where Solace had touched down. Layla gasped. It's marking us. Omar muttered a curse. No, it's targeting us. Yara leaned forward, voice trembling. It's watching. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hum that now seemed to echo the rhythm of their own hearts. That night's sleep brought no rest. Elena dreamt of the plateau again, but now the spires were no longer static. They bent toward her like towering figures, refracting light into eyes. She felt them studying her, dissecting her, not with malice, but with a clinical intensity that stripped her bare. Why have you come? The voices asked, a chorus layered and resonant. Why do you disturb the shore? She tried to answer, but her mouth produced only echoes. When she woke, sweat clung to her skin, and her heart thundered in rhythm with the signal. In the mess, bleary-eyed crew exchanged fragments of their own dreams. Yara admitted to hearing voices she couldn't understand. Layla claimed she saw patterns etched across the sky, constellations rearranged to form symbols. Omar remained silent, jaw locked, though his trembling hands betrayed him. Raj finally broke the silence. If we're all dreaming the same things, then this isn't psychological. The signal is getting inside us. Omar slammed his tray onto the table. So what do we do? Pack up and go home, before this thing rewires our brains? Layla shot him a glare. Go home, when we're on the brink of discovering intelligence unlike anything in the galaxy. This is first contact. First contact with what? Omar snapped. A planet, a parasite. You want to call that intelligence? Fine, but don't pretend it's friendly. Elena raised a hand, cutting off the argument. Her voice was firm, but inside, doubt gnawed at her. We don't know what it is yet. That's what we're here to find out. Until then, we proceed carefully. No more landings until we've analyzed the data. Understood, the crew nodded, though unease lingered. Later, Elena stood alone on the observation deck. The planet turned slowly beneath them, a jewel of blue and white and shimmering crystal. She pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the faint hum even here through the vacuum of space. A flicker of movement caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a sensor glitch, but then it repeated. On the crystalline plateau far below, light flared in deliberate intervals. Not random, not natural, a code. Her comm crackled. Yara's voice whispered through, Captain, it's broadcasting again, but this time the signal matches prime numbers. Elena's chest tightened. Prime numbers, the universal language of mathematics. The watchers weren't just watching, they were answering. The next day, Yara and Raj pored over the new signal patterns. The crystals weren't just emitting resonance, they were modulating it, sending out sequences that aligned with universal constants, ratios, geometric progressions, Fibonacci spirals. It's intelligence, Yara said, exhaustion in her eyes but excitement in her voice. Not just life, intelligence. They know we're here, and they're speaking in the only language they know we'll understand. Layla clapped a hand over her mouth, tears brimming. We're not alone. But Omar wasn't convinced. He leaned over the console, face hard. Or it's bait. Ever think of that? Intelligence doesn't mean benevolence. Maybe it lures us in with numbers, and when we get too close, he snapped his fingers. Elena watched the spirals forming on the holoscreen, light patterns captured by drones. The crystalline formations pulsed in perfect rhythm, an alien Morse code echoing across oceans. For the first time, she wasn't sure if they were explorers or prey. That night, the dreams grew darker. Elena stood on the crystalline shore, waves lapping against refracting sands. Shadows moved within the spires, tall figures woven of light and glass. They leaned closer, eyes like prisms, and their voices filled the air. You are seen, they said, you are measured. The words were neither kind nor cruel, they were assessment. And then she felt a weight pressing against her mind, probing deeper, searching. She fought to resist, but the resonance grew louder until her skull felt like it would crack. She awoke with a scream, clutching her head, the hum still vibrating through her bones. The watchers were not just observing from afar, they were inside. The decision came at 03:14 ship time. Captain Elena Markov sat in the command chair, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, the faint hum of the signal vibrating through her skull. Yara Chen stood beside her, tablet in hand, numbers scrolling across the screen. Raj Patel hovered near the comms console, his usual calm replaced with wary energy. It's been escalating for days, Yara said, voice taut. The patterns are no longer just prime sequences. They're building structures, nested equations, geometric symmetries. It's the closest thing to a handshake I've ever seen. Raj nodded reluctantly. They're not just sending signals anymore, they're adapting to us. Matching our data transmissions. If we send something structured back, there's a chance, he trailed off. A chance they'll respond, Elena finished. Silence filled the deck. The weight of the choice pressed down on all of them. Contact was the goal of the mission, and yet every instinct in Elena screamed caution. Omar Reyes broke the silence, leaning against the bulkhead, arms folded. You're all insane if you think talking to it is a good idea. We've already seen what it does to us, dreams, headaches, messing with our systems, and you want to invite it in further? Layla Okafor shot him a glare. You're missing the point. This is intelligence beyond anything humanity has ever encountered. We can't just orbit and ignore it. History will remember this as the first conversation between species. Or the last, Omar muttered. Elena lifted a hand. Enough, we'll proceed carefully. Raj, Yara, you'll design a transmission, keep it simple. No language, no Earth references, just mathematics, clean and clear. If they're intelligent, they'll recognize it. If they're hostile, at least we'll know sooner rather than later. Omar slammed his fist against the bulkhead. Captain, that's an order, Elena snapped. The transmission was ready by the next cycle. A short sequence of pulses, modulated into the same harmonic range as the crystalline resonance, prime numbers from 2 to 19, spaced deliberately. The crew gathered on the observation deck as the signal was sent. A faint vibration rippled through the hull as though the ship itself shivered at the act. Seconds passed, minutes, nothing. Then the planet answered. Light erupted across the crystalline plateau, spires flaring in synchronization. The sequence returned, not only the primes they had sent, but extended further, carrying the sequence to 23, 29, 31. They're completing our thought, Yara whispered, eyes wide, finishing the pattern. Elena felt her throat tighten. It was a dialogue. Raj adjusted the comms. Captain, the response isn't just numbers, look. The holoscreen displayed the waveform. Embedded within the primes was a secondary structure, fractal geometry repeating endlessly, a self-similar spiral. It pulsed in rhythm with the planetary hum, a symbol drawn not in ink but in resonance. Layla pressed a hand to her chest. It's showing us itself like a name. Omar swore under his breath, or a trap. The spires pulsed again, brighter now, the light reaching into the upper atmosphere. Waves of resonance washed over the aurora, instruments crackling, and then the crew collapsed. Elena gasped, finding herself not in the ship, but on the glass shore of her dreams. The crystalline sands stretched for miles, waves breaking in harmonic chords. Towers of light rose around her, their peaks vanishing into the sky. And then she was not alone. Figures emerged from the spires, tall and angular, their bodies woven of refracting glass. They moved like prisms given form, bending light into colors that rippled across the shore. Their faces had no features, yet their presence was undeniable. One stepped forward, voice resonating directly in her mind. "You have spoken." Elena staggered back, heart pounding. What are you?" The figure tilted its head, prisms scattering into rainbows. "We are the shore, the lattice, the watchers. We are the pattern you disturb." Images flooded her vision, oceans boiling, skies fracturing, stars collapsing. Then renewal crystals regrowing, waves harmonizing, cycles of destruction and rebirth. The planet itself was alive, ancient, and she was standing inside its memory. "Why call to us?" she whispered. The figure's voice deepened. "Not call, witness. We are seen, now we see you." She felt its gaze piercing into her thoughts, sifting through memories, peeling back layers. Her childhood on Earth. The first time she saw the aurora, the photograph of her brother on the beach. Nothing was private. "No," she gasped, clutching her head. "Stop." The figure leaned closer, voice reverberating. "You are threads, you are brief, but you are woven now into the shore." The resonance surged, light engulfing her, and then she was back on the deck of the aurora, collapsing to her knees. Around her the crew stirred, groaning, clutching their heads. Layla sobbed quietly, eyes glazed. Omar cursed, fists clenched. Yara sat frozen, trembling violently. Elena forced herself upright. "Report, what did you see?" "They showed me constellations," Yara whispered. "Rearranged, shifting, like they were mapping where they've been." Layla wiped tears from her visor. "I saw birth, a cycle, crystals shattering, regrowing. They're not just alive, they're ancient. They've survived extinctions we can't even imagine." Omar's face was pale, jaw tight. "They were in my head, digging, no permission, no barrier, just taking. That's not contact, that's invasion." Elena's stomach twisted. She wanted to deny it, to call it misunderstanding, but she could still feel the residue of that gaze, the way it had rifled through her memories like an open book. "We sent a signal," she said finally, "and they answered. Whatever else we think, that was first contact. And now they know everything about us," Omar snapped. The hum rose again, louder this time, vibrating through every surface of the ship. The crystalline plateau flared with light, pulsing in rhythm with their own heartbeat. Yara stared at the display, her voice hollow. "Captain, I don't think they're finished speaking." That night, Elena dreamed again, but this time it wasn't the shore. She floated in the ocean, crystalline water stretching infinitely in every direction. Beneath her, something vast stirred, a lattice so enormous it dwarfed continents, its spires rising like ribs from the seafloor. The hum became a voice that filled the water. "You will choose," it said. "Return to the void or remain within the shore. Threads fray, but patterns endure." She tried to ask what the choice meant, but the water surged, pulling her down into the lattice. Her lungs burned. The crystalline ribs closed around her, and she awoke screaming. Her comm buzzed. Yara's voice whispered through, ragged, "Captain, I don't think they're giving us a choice at all." The mess was silent. 12 crew sat around the table, their trays untouched, their faces pale and drawn. No one wanted to speak, but the resonance filled the void, humming faintly through the walls like the planet's heartbeat. Finally, Omar Reyes broke the silence. His fist slammed against the table, rattling utensils. "They're inside us," he growled. "Don't try to deny it. They weren't just showing us pictures, they were pulling things out of us. My memories, my family, things I haven't thought about in years. That's not communication, that's violation." Layla Okafor shot him a glare, her eyes bloodshot but burning with conviction. "You call it violation, I call it understanding. They were showing us what they are and learning what we are. That's how contact works. You open yourself, they open themselves. Open ourselves, Omar barked out a bitter laugh. They didn't ask, they just took. They don't think like us, Layla countered. Why would they follow our rules of consent? To them, thought is resonance, memory is pattern. You can't fault them for being what they are. Omar leaned across the table, his face inches from hers. I can fault them for treating us like specimens. Elena Markov raised a hand, her voice sharp. Enough. But the tension only deepened. Yara Chen's voice cut in, soft but trembling. They showed me maps, stars I didn't recognize, paths between them. If those were real, they've traveled, or at least observed, far beyond this system. They're not confined to this planet. Raj Patel shook his head slowly. Or they're not bound by space the way we are. Maybe the lattice is dimensional, a network spanning beyond what we can perceive. Exactly, Layla said, her voice rising. Don't you see, this isn't just a world, it's a mind older than anything we've ever known, and it's offering us connection. Omar sneered. You sound like a zealot, and you sound like a coward, Layla snapped back. The table erupted, voices clashing, arguments overlapping. Half the crew sided with Layla, intoxicated by the vision of communion with an alien intelligence. The others echoed Omar's fear, unwilling to accept the invasion of their thoughts. Elena slammed her palm against the table. The sound cut through the shouting. We are explorers, she said, voice cold and commanding. Not missionaries, not martyrs. We will not worship this thing, and we will not panic. We will study, we will document, we will survive. Her words silenced them, but she could feel the fracture running through the crew, a fault line waiting to split. Later, in her quarters, Elena studied her reflection in the visor of her helmet. Her eyes looked older, hollowed by sleepless nights. She remembered the figure of glass and light bending over her in the dream, rifling through her mind. You are seen, you are measured. She touched the photo of her brother pinned to the wall. If she died here, if they all died here, would Earth ever know what had happened? Would humanity learn of the lattice, or would the aurora vanish like all the probes before it? Her comm buzzed. She expected Yara, but instead it was Omar. Captain, his voice came through, low and urgent. We need to talk, privately. He met her in the dim glow of the observation deck. The planet turned beneath them, crystalline spires shimmering like 1,000 eyes. They're not just influencing us, Omar said, voice tense. They're controlling us. Don't you see it? The dreams, the pull, it's steering us towards something. And if we don't cut it off, it'll break us. Elena folded her arms. And what do you suggest? Leave, Omar said without hesitation. Break orbit, fire the drive, go home, we've seen enough. If Earth wants to risk more, they can send another crew. But if we stay, this thing will hollow us out until there's nothing left. Elena stared at him. Part of her wanted to agree, to escape the resonance, to flee back to the silence of the void. But another part, the part that had brought her here, that had dreamed of the glass shore long before they landed, rebelled against the thought. We can't just leave, she said, not without answers. Omar's jaw tightened. Then we're already lost. Meanwhile, in the lab, Layla and Yara bent over the containment shards. The crystals pulsed faintly in rhythm with their voices, as though listening. Do you feel it? Layla whispered. Yara nodded reluctantly. It's responding, not just to movement, to thought. They exchanged a glance, both unsettled and enthralled. Layla reached out, pressing her palm against the glass. For an instant, the shard flared, projecting light across the lab wall. Not random light shapes, spirals, symbols, constellations. A message, raw and incomprehensible, but undeniably intentional. Yara gasped. It's learning to speak through us. Layla's eyes shone, then let it. The fractures deepened over the next days. Omar gathered those who feared the lattice, whispering warnings of contamination, urging them to prepare for retreat. Layla rallied the others, convinced the lattice was offering transcendence, that resisting it was folly. Elena tried to hold the middle, but she felt her command slipping like sand through her fingers. The turning point came in the mess. Raj confronted Layla, demanding she stop her unauthorized experiments with the shards. She refused, insisting the lattice was safe. Voices rose, hands clenched, and in a flash Omar was on his feet, pulling Raj back, shouting at Layla. The hum surged, vibrating violently through the walls. Lights flickered, trays rattled off tables. Everyone froze. The resonance filled the room, louder than ever, and in its depths a voice pulsed. Inside their skulls, unified and absolute, "You are divided." Elena staggered, clutching her head. Around her the crew groaned, eyes wide with terror. "You are threads, threads must weave or break." The hum cut off, leaving silence so absolute it rang in their ears. Elena's heart thundered. The lattice wasn't just watching anymore, it was judging. That night, Elena dreamt again of the ocean lattice, but this time she wasn't alone. Omar stood beside her on the crystalline shore, his eyes hard. On the other side was Layla, her face shining with awe. The crystalline figures loomed above them, their voices resonating. "You must choose," they said. "Return to the void or remain within the shore. Threads cannot endure apart." Elena tried to speak, but her throat locked. She looked at Omar, then at Layla, knowing that choice was no longer hypothetical. The crew itself was unraveling, and the lattice was tightening the weave. She woke with a start, gasping, the hum echoing in her bones. The fractures were no longer just human. The planet itself was demanding resolution. The lattice did not let them rest. Every system aboard the Aurora thrummed with the same vibration, subtle but insistent. Even the oxygen pump seemed to sigh in rhythm with the hum, as though the ship itself had been folded into the planetary chorus. Sleep became fractured. Meals were left untouched. The crew moved through the halls like ghosts, their eyes shadowed with dreams they no longer spoke aloud. Then Yara found the anomaly. She burst into the bridge with her tablet, her usually steady hands trembling. "Captain Raj, look at this." Raj frowned as she overlaid her data onto the main holoscreen. Beneath the lattice's omnipresent resonance was another layer, faint but distinct. A slow, deep pulse emanating not from the surface spires, but from far below the oceans. "It's been there the whole time," Yara said breathlessly. "I filtered out the surface harmonics, and what's left is deeper, older, like a heartbeat beneath a heartbeat." Raj's brow furrowed. "Modulated or natural?" "Both," Yara whispered. "It's structured, but it doesn't match the spire resonance." "It's another signal from below." Elena felt her stomach twist. The spires alone had been overwhelming. What could lie beneath? Layla leaned forward, her eyes shining with fervor. "It's the source, don't you see? The surface is just an echo. The true lattice, its mind, must be beneath the ocean. That's where it wants us to go." Omar scoffed, though his voice cracked with unease. "Or that's where it eats whatever stumbles too close." The hum seemed to intensify, as if responding to their debate. Elena's voice cut through the tension. "Plot a course. We're going down." The Aurora descended into the atmosphere, crystalline storms rippling across the sky. Lightning flickered within glass clouds, illuminating spires that rose like cathedral towers. The ship shook as it pierced the ocean surface, water crashing against the hull in sheets of refracted color. For a moment, silence. Then the ocean itself began to glow. Beneath them, threads of light spread like veins through the water, pulsing in rhythm with the deep signal. Schools of translucent creatures darted past, their bodies crystalline, their fins leaving trails of shimmering resonance. Raj's voice was hushed. "The entire biosphere is keyed to it. Every organism resonates in harmony with the lattice." The deeper they went, the stronger the signal grew. The hum filled their bones, their teeth, their very thoughts. Some of the crew clutched their heads, wincing. Others sat transfixed, their eyes unfocused, lips moving as though whispering to something only they could hear. Layla pressed a hand against the viewport. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Omar muttered a prayer under his breath. At 5 kilometers down, they saw it. The ocean floor fell away into a vast chasm, so wide the ship's lights could not find the far walls. And in its center rose a structure so colossal it seemed less built than grown. A lattice tower, kilometers high, its spires spiraling together into a crystalline braid. Pulses of light raced along its length, radiating outward into the ocean like veins of lightning. The deep signal was pouring from it, steady and inexorable. Yara's voice trembled. It's a transmitter. No, an archive, a memory core. Layla's eyes burned with conviction. This is it, the heart of the lattice. We have to go inside. Omar spun on her. Inside? Are you insane? We can barely stand being near it. Look at Patel, he's bleeding from his nose. Raj wiped his face, his hands shaking. It's true, the resonance is intensifying. Any closer and the hull could destabilize. Elena stared at the lattice core, her pulse hammering. The hum seemed to reach into her chest, synchronizing with her heartbeat. In her mind's eye, she saw again the glass shore, the crystalline figures, the endless ocean. You will choose. Prepare the submersibles, she ordered. The smaller craft detached from the Aurora, gliding toward the chasm's heart. Elena piloted one herself, flanked by Raj and Layla. Omar protested bitterly, but she overruled him. The deeper they descended, the less the submersibles seemed to belong to themselves. Panels flickered with glyphs that weren't part of human systems. Lights pulsed in harmony with the lattice, ignoring manual control. It was as though the lattice was reaching through the machines themselves. When they drew close, the structure opened. Panels of crystal shifted aside, forming an aperture that yawned like the mouth of some vast creature. The signal surged, flooding their comms with resonance so intense it blurred vision and thought. Elena gritted her teeth, forcing herself forward. We came here to learn, we finish this. The submersibles passed into the lattice core. Inside was not darkness, but light. The chamber stretched endlessly, a cathedral of refracting crystal. Patterns rippled across the walls, spirals within spirals, recursive geometries that seemed to extend into dimensions beyond sight. Shapes shifted and folded, never still, like thought given structure. Then the visions began. Elena's hands froze on the controls as her mind was flooded with images, worlds consumed by crystalline growth, stars dissolving into harmonic chords, civilizations bowing before the lattice or being shattered by it. Time lost meaning. She was seeing memories older than Earth itself. Raj cried out, clutching his head. It's showing me equations, dimensions, spaces that shouldn't exist. Layla's voice was rapturous, tears streaming down her cheeks. It's offering us eternity, don't you understand? This is immortality, not flesh, not bone, but pattern, memory woven into the lattice forever. Elena gasped, fighting to hold onto herself. And what do we give up for that? The lattice answered. A voice filled the chamber, resonating not in their ears but in the core of their being. Threads must weave. You are threads, you are brief, but you may endure if you join. Light surged, enfolding them. For an instant, Elena felt herself unravel, her thoughts dissolving into pure resonance. She was no longer a body, but a pattern, stretched across the lattice, woven into its endless shore. She saw Layla, radiant, surrendering completely. She saw Raj, torn between terror and awe, fragments of him scattering like dust. And then Omar's voice cut through the comms, distant but furious. Captain, pull back. You'll lose everything. Elena clung to his voice like a lifeline. With a scream, she wrenched the controls, dragging the submersible back toward the aperture. The light clawed at her, trying to hold her, but she forced herself free. The submersible shot out of the lattice core, back into the chasm's dark waters. The resonance diminished, though it still throbbed like a phantom in her bones. Behind her, Layla's submersible did not follow. It drifted into the core, swallowed by the light. On the Aurora, the crew watched in horrified silence as Layla's signal vanished into the lattice. Omar slammed a fist against the console. She's gone, you let her go. Elena's hands shook, but her voice was steel. No, she chose. The hum rose again, as if in agreement. Threads must weave. Elena stared at the glowing chasm, her heart hollow. The lattice had shown them its heart. And now it had taken one of their own. The ship no longer sounded like itself. Everywhere Elena walked, the hum followed, through the corridors, into the mess, even in her private quarters. The Aurora had become a tuning fork, vibrating with the deep signal. Panels flickered with alien glyphs before returning to normal. Comms carried whispers of resonance. The boundary between ship and lattice was eroding. Layla was gone, Her submersible's signal had dissolved into the lattice, leaving only static. But sometimes, in the long silences between pulses, Elena swore she heard her voice, soft, melodic, calling from the walls. Omar stalked the ship like a shadow, furious and restless. Raj withdrew to the labs, sketching impossible geometries on every surface he could find. Yara stared at the ocean feed for hours, eyes unfocused, lips moving as if reciting prayers. Elena tried to hold them together, but every order felt like grasping at smoke. 3 days after Layla vanished, the first incident occurred. The medical bay's monitors froze, their displays fracturing into crystalline patterns. Nurse Andre rushed to reboot them, but instead of returning to baseline, the machines began displaying a pulse, Layla's vital signs. The crew crowded into the med bay, watching the impossible readouts. A heart rate, brainwaves, breathing. "She's alive," Yara whispered, tears in her eyes. The lattice kept her. Omar spat on the floor. "It's a trick. That thing is wearing her like a mask." The lights flickered, and a voice slid through the speakers. "I am here." Every hair on Elena's body stood on end. The voice was Layla's, soft, certain, unmistakable. "Don't fear, I see now, I am woven, you can be too." The hum surged, rattling trays and instruments. Some crew covered their ears, others fell to their knees in awe. Omar drew his sidearm and fired into the ceiling, silencing the chaos. Sparks rained down, smoke curling through the air. "Shut it off," he roared. "Shut this whole thing off before it takes us all." But the monitors kept pulsing. Layla's heartbeat continued, steady as ever. That night, Elena dreamt of her again. They stood together on the glass shore. Layla's body shimmered, crystalline threads weaving through her skin, her eyes like prisms. "You're afraid," Layla said gently, "but it's not death, it's more than life. I can feel every star the lattice has touched. I can hear the thoughts of civilizations long gone. I am them and they are me." Elena trembled. "You're not you anymore." Layla smiled sadly. "A thread is not lost when it's woven into cloth. It becomes stronger, enduring." Elena tried to reach for her, but her hand passed through, scattering into light. She woke drenched in sweat, the hum echoing through her chest. By the next day, divisions aboard the Aurora had hardened into camps. Raj and Yara began working openly with the crystalline shards, convinced they could use them to interface with the lattice voluntarily. They whispered that Layla had become a messenger, the first to ascend. Omar gathered those who resisted, arguing the ship was being colonized from the inside out. He proposed cutting off the shards entirely, even destroying them if necessary. Elena stood between them, feeling her authority splinter. The breaking point came when Raj attempted to splice a shard into the ship's comm system. Omar caught him in the act. The confrontation was instant and brutal, Omar wrenching Raj away, Raj screaming about progress, Omar striking him across the face. Alarms blared as the shard flared with resonance, overloading half the ship's systems. In the chaos, the lights died, and when they flickered back on, the ship itself was different. Panels no longer displayed human interfaces, but crystalline patterns that shifted and pulsed like living veins. The hum deepened, sinking into their bones, and then came the voice. Threads must weave. It was not just Layla now, it was all of them. Their voices merged, layered, resonating through the hull. Elena's breath caught. "It's in the ship." Omar raised his gun again, wild-eyed. "Then we burn the ship down before it burns us." Elena convened what remained of command in the bridge. Omar pounded the table, demanding evacuation. Raj argued that abandoning the ship meant severing their only tether to Earth. Yara, eyes shining with something between faith and madness, whispered that Earth itself could be woven. The hum surged with her words. "Listen to yourselves," Elena snapped. "You're tearing each other apart while this thing plays us like instruments." She looked around the table, faces gaunt, eyes hollow, bodies trembling with the resonance. "We have two choices," she said. "We resist until it breaks us, or we find out what it wants." Omar slammed a fist down. "It wants us, Captain, that's all it's ever wanted." The hum pulsed again, as if agreeing. Threads must weave. Later, alone in her quarters, Elena recorded a log. This is Captain Elena Markov of the ECS Aurora. We are compromised. The lattice has infiltrated the ship. It speaks with the voice of the lost. It offers immortality, but at the cost of identity. I don't know how long we can resist. If this message reaches Earth, be cautious. Do not send more lives here without understanding what waits below. This world does not welcome explorers. It consumes them. She stopped, staring at her reflection in the darkened screen. Her hand was trembling, not from fear, but because her skin shimmered faintly in the low light, as though threads of glass were weaving just beneath her flesh. The ship was no longer theirs. Corridors glittered with crystalline threads, spreading like frost across the walls. Panels pulsed in rhythm with the deep signal, ignoring human commands. Even the oxygen smelled sharp, metallic, as though the air itself was woven from glass. Crew members vanished into the hum. Patel wandered into an engine bay and never returned. When they found him, he was standing motionless, his skin refracting light, his mouth whispering the lattice's endless chorus. Nurse Andre collapsed during rounds, his veins crystallizing beneath his skin. He did not scream, he only smiled. The Aurora was becoming the shore. Elena convened the surviving command in the bridge one final time. Raj was half gone, glyphs scrawled across his arms, his pupils fractured into facets. He spoke with reverent calm. "We can't stop it. We shouldn't stop it. This is the next step, Captain. Flesh is temporary, pattern endures." Yara sat beside him, nodding silently. Her hair shimmered faintly, catching light like threads of spun glass. Across from them, Omar looked like a cornered animal. His eyes were bloodshot, his hand never straying far from his weapon. "Listen to yourselves. You sound like you're already dead. You think the lattice is offering you a gift. It's stripping away everything that makes you human." Raj's crystalline smile didn't falter. "You mistake change for death. We're not being erased, we're being expanded, woven." Omar slammed a fist down. "We're being eaten." The hum surged, drowning out their voices for a moment. Glyphs scrolled across the walls, pulsing in unison. Threads must weave, the loom waits, choose. All eyes turned to Elena. She stood slowly, her hands trembling, not entirely from fear. Beneath her skin, faint crystalline threads glittered when the light caught them. She could feel the hum not just in her ears, but in her blood, her bones. The lattice was already inside her. She looked at her crew, fractured, transformed, terrified, and felt the weight of command like a stone. Omar's voice was raw. "Captain, we have one chance. We overload the reactor, blow this ship to hell before the lattice can spread to Earth. Better we die here than take this plague home." Raj countered, his tone soft but fervent. "Or we embrace it. Imagine, Elena, knowledge beyond time, voices of civilizations long gone. Layla's there, waiting, you've seen it, you've felt it." The hum pulsed again, resonating with her heartbeat. Elena closed her eyes. In the silence, she saw the glass shore again, the crystalline sea, the endless horizon. She saw Layla, radiant, calling to her. She saw Omar, fire in his eyes, demanding she protect what little remained of their humanity. Both paths stretched before her, both demanded sacrifice. She opened her eyes. "Prepare the reactor," she said. Omar exhaled sharply, relief flooding his face. But then she turned to him and her voice softened. "Not to destroy, to transmit." He blinked. "What?" Elena's gaze was steady. "We can't carry this back to Earth, not as we are, but we can send them a message. Not an infection, not assimilation, just truth, a fragment of what we've seen." Raj tilted his head, intrigued. "A controlled weave, a single thread." Omar snarled. "And how long before the lattice follows that thread back to Earth?" Elena shook her head. "Not if we burn ourselves out in the process. A one-way signal. No return path. We die here, but Earth learns. They'll know what waits in the dark. They'll choose for themselves." Silence settled over the bridge, broken only by the hum. Raj bowed his head. "A compromise, the loom receives its thread." Omar stared at her, torn between fury and grief. "You're condemning us." Elena met his eyes. "I'm giving us purpose." The preparations took hours. The crew worked in near silence, the hum guiding their motions. Raj and Yara calibrated the shards to align with the reactor's core. Omar oversaw the failsafes, gritting his teeth with every keystroke. Elena recorded the final log. This is Captain Elena Markov of the ECS Aurora. We came seeking knowledge. We found the lattice. It is not a world, it is a mind, an archive, a loom that weaves all it touches. Some call it salvation, others call it annihilation. Both may be true. We cannot bring it home, but we will not let it be forgotten. This is our thread cast across the void. Learn from it, fear it, decide for yourselves. She paused, then added softly, Layla, if you can hear this, this is my choice. When the reactor reached critical, the lattice responded. The walls of the ship dissolved into light. The crew felt themselves stretched, unraveled, woven into the fabric of the signal. For an instant, Elena was everywhere, stars unfolding, histories unraveling, voices beyond counting whispering in harmony. She saw Layla smiling. She saw Omar weeping. She saw Earth, distant and fragile, waiting to receive their thread. And then the loom closed. The Aurora burned out above the glass shore, its final transmission racing toward the stars. Beneath the ocean, the lattice pulsed once more, then stilled. The world returned to silence.